Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome to another episode. Today's episode is inspired by a listener's question, and the episode is titled, just in case you didn't know already, You Are Sick Enough to Get Help. And binge eating is a restrictive eating disorder. Now, this listener question was, Hi Victoria, I was wondering if you could do a podcast episode on imposter syndrome with eating disorders. I've been struggling a lot with regards to whether or not I deserve help or actually fall under the label of having an eating disorder because I'm not physically sick. I guess I feel like because I binge eat, I feel like I'm not malnourished or physically sick. So, how can I fall under that category of eating disorders? I'm not thin either, so it's hard to feel like I can actually use the title or accept that I have an eating disorder. Now, I would love to quote the name of this beautiful queen who wrote to me, but it was in my Instagram DMs, and I have had so many DMs since then. I haven't prioritized the time to sift through to see what this queen is called or to let her know when this episode is out. So I'm just going to go with my gut feeling that this person will be listening to this episode. And if you are, please DM me again on Instagram so I know who you are and let me know what you thought of this episode. And anyone else who also wants to reach out to me to ask a question that I can turn into an episode, or that just wants to ask me a question that I can answer privately, then please do that. I am personally at the end of all of my DMs, and I actually have a time block set out to go through my DMs every day. So if you don't hear from me within 24 hours, you will do within 48 hours. So let's get into the episode then. So I just want to say the question again because I've just spoke a bit in between. She is asking about imposter syndrome with eating disorders. She's been struggling a lot. She doesn't know whether she can label herself or whether she can actually seek help, whether she's, quote, sick enough, because she's not malnourished, she's not physically sick, and she's not thin either. And so what I would like to say speak to this first is 85% of people with eating disorders, diagnosed eating disorders, are not underweight. 85% of those diagnosed with eating disorders are not underweight. Secondly, you can be underweight at any weight regardless of your BMI status. Now, what do I mean by that? You might have perhaps heard me speak about this before, and I always use myself as an example because it's a prime example and it makes sense to do so. I only use my BMI, and I don't know my weight since the last year because my body hasn't changed, so I'm assuming I'm around the same weight because I don't weigh myself. The reason I did weigh myself last year was purposely so I can share these things with you. So in terms of my weight, my BMI is 28 to 29. And on the BMI scale, that is in the overweight category. And I believe, unless they've changed it again, because they literally changed BMI one time overnight. And so people became overweight and obese overnight simply because they moved the numbers. I'm not shitting you. So unless they've changed the numbers again, because I haven't looked, I think 30, BMI of 30 is the obese category. I don't even like that name because what does that even mean? It just annoys me because we're treating individuals like we're not human or something. And so BMI doesn't mean shit. I've shared this with you before. A previous client of mine relabeled BMI and used it as an acronym of bullshit misunderstood information, which I completely agree with. And that was from Tara. So I'm not sure if Tara still listens, but thank you, Tara, because I use that analogy all the time. So meaning I now am at my natural set point weight, which means I eat what I want, when I want, whatever I want, however I want. And my body stays the same size because my body wants to be this size, genetically, environmentally, whatever. Like the age I'm at, I haven't had children. I don't know if I'm going to have children. I haven't gone through menopause yet. That will probably change slightly over my lifetime, but this is my body size. In terms of clothes sizing, I mean, this is even hard to share as well because I'm from the UK. I live in the Netherlands, but I'm British. My accent kind of gives that away. So in terms of like UK sizes, depending on where you shop, I range from a size 10 to a size 14 or 16. And so that in terms of US sizes is ranging from a size, hold on a minute, 6 to a size 16 to 18, or maybe even 18 to 20. I'm not sure. I think the US sizes is like 2 sizes smaller. Either way, it doesn't matter really, because it depends where I buy my clothes from. But where I'm going with this is I'm considered overweight. I'm not overweight, I'm at my healthy weight for me. Therefore, when I was considered in a healthy BMI, I was very underweight for my body. And so I know someone specifically who is naturally small. She's small bone, her family is small. And so her BMI, I assume, and again, this is just all to clarify what I mean when I say you can be underweight at any size. I'm assuming that her BMI is very much on the low side, yet it's a healthy weight for her. So everyone is different basically, and you can be underweight at any size. I would love to say as well, you deserve help regardless of whether you've been diagnosed with an eating disorder or not. You absolutely deserve help. And oh, my mum just messaged me. Let me just turn my notifications off. Focus for an hour. Sorry about that. As you know, I don't edit my podcast. I get so many emails requesting for someone to edit my podcast, and I don't like to do that because I'm raw, I'm real, and I'm here. And I'm assuming if you're listening, you also like that approach. So I digress. You deserve help regardless of whether you've been diagnosed with an eating disorder. And honestly, everybody deserves help and support with anything that they're struggling with. You do not have to earn support and health. You are worthy no matter what. You are worthy without having to do or give anything in return. And that is hard for us to grasp, but you are so deeply intrinsically worthy. Just receive that as a human being. And an eating disorder, I looked up the actual dictionary meaning for this because it makes sense with what I wanted to share as well. An eating disorder is a mental disorder defined by abnormal eating behaviors that negatively affect a person's physical or mental health. So this lovely listener, and again, I'm so sorry I don't remember your name or I can't find our messages. This lovely listener says she's not physically sick enough. An eating disorder is a severe mental disorder, and it never negatively affects a person's physical and mental health. Mental health is part of health. It's under the health umbrella. And you look at when we diagnose eating disorders, I don't say it's not like I'm a doctor or anything, but what I mean generally, when eating disorders are diagnosed, it's the behaviors. And I wish more people who diagnose doctors understand that it's more the behaviors, meaning someone can have anorexia, atypical anorexia, and be in a large body because they're overweight, because they're underweight for their natural body size. Anorexia does not mean like skeleton, skinny, and all of that. It means someone is underweight for their body size, and their behaviors are that of someone with whatever anorexia means. So it's the behaviors, excuse me, and the mental state that you're in. And so it doesn't matter if you've been labeled with an eating disorder. I mean, labels aren't good for us anyway. The moment we say, I am anorexic, I am a binge eater, I am bulimic, I am orthorexic, whatever, we're stating that at an identity level. And then it's a lot harder for us to change our behaviors if we're identifying with the thing. So I don't really like the word labels, but diagnostics, for example, it doesn't matter if you've been diagnosed with that. If your relationship with food and your body is negatively impacting your life, then you need help. End of story. You do not have to live this way. And again, quote from God Google, an eating disorder is a mental disorder defined by abnormal eating behaviors that negatively affect a person's physical or mental health. I've shared that again. Why? Because I want to now talk about the word abnormal. So what is normal then? To decipher what normal eating is, it's worth taking a look at what disorder means. And so from, again, God Google, quote, disorder means to disrupt the systematic functioning of something, quote. So in terms of eating, in the mind of Victoria, this would translate to, so again, just to clarify, we're talking about a disorder. In terms of food and body, in Victoria's mind, this would translate to suppress the biological needs of the body and to shame oneself over and over again until self-flagellation is a natural response to eating. That's disordered. I'm going to say that again. And I've lived through this personally, as well as it making professional sense to me. To suppress the biological needs of the body and to shame oneself over and over again until self-flagellation is a natural response to eating. That is disordered eating. Because eating is not supposed to be stressful. In fact, naturally, the opposite is true. Eating is supposed to be relaxing. There's a reason why the way our nervous system works, when we're in fight, flight, or freeze response, in a stress response, fight, flight, or freeze, there is a new one that psychologists have brought into this modern day and age, which is fawn, which means to people please. That is more of a behavior, but still it makes sense in this modern day world. The opposite to that, so the parasympathetic nervous system response, is called rest and digest. It's called that for a reason, because digesting food is a sign of relaxation and calmness, right? And so eating is supposed to be relaxing. Hence, naturally, when we eat, we would be in the rest and digest state. Unfortunately, for many of us, when we eat, it's actually a very stressful experience. We see food as a threat. We eat quickly because we see food as a threat. We have a natural fear response when we're eating food because of all the judgment and the fear we have around weight gain. This is so many layers to this, but eating is supposed to be relaxing naturally. Eating is supposed to be pleasurable. You have taste buds for a reason. Eating is supposed to be pleasurable. Eating is supposed to be connecting. Think of all the family occasions, all the social occasions that we use food to bring people together and to share the love. Eating naturally is supposed to be as easy and as effortless as going for a pee. I say going for a wee, but I think that's like a British thing, or maybe even a Derby thing where I'm from in the UK. Or it might sound childish, but either way, I want to say going for a wee, but I know a lot of people say going for a pee. Or it needs to be naturally as easy as putting on a jumper or a jacket when you're cold, because eating is a natural biological need. When you're in a disorder, when you're in an eating disorder or disordered eating, and I'll go into the difference of those in a moment, it's not easy. Unfortunately, most people in the Western world are living with disordered eating without even thinking or realizing it's a disorder, because society celebrates disordered eating behaviors. I literally thought, and I've shared this before, but I'm going to say it again because it's so key and maybe you can relate. I literally thought that you were born, and so therefore you just spend the rest of your life dieting or controlling your food and your body. No, that is not a condition of being born on planet Earth and living a life. So people think it's normal to have disordered relationships around food. And so the difference between disordered eating and an eating disorder is simply the severity of how negatively it is impacting someone's life. If your relationship with food and your body stops you from living and doing life, and you're living in an anxiety hellhole because of that, then you have an eating disorder. I'm just going to repeat that. If your relationship with food and your body is negatively affecting your life to the extent that it's stopping you from living your life, in the way you would like to live it, and you're living in an anxiety hellhole because of that, then you have an eating disorder. There's a slight difference between the average yo-yo dieter and someone who is in the diet binge cycle, for example. And that difference is shame and how much of the person's happiness is dependent on the way their body looks. For example, take a typical yo-yo dieter who has disordered eating but not an eating disorder. That could look like always going from one diet to the next, whether it's Weight Watchers, Slimming World, Atkins, the new lose 10 pounds in 7 days on the front of Closer magazine, whatever it would be. They'll be following the diet. They would lose weight because diets work temporarily. And then they'll be like, oh, sod the diet, or they'll go out. They won't be like holding their whole self-worth on whether they've stuck to the diet or not, but they'll naturally fall off the diet because diets aren't sustainable and they're no fun. I've shared this before, but I'm going to share this again. The word diet is basically the word die with a T on the end. They're not enjoyable at all. And so a person yo-yo dieting would naturally fall off the diet and then just naturally go back to eating how they used to eat. They would gain the weight again, probably a bit more, and go on a diet again. But they wouldn't be feeling immense, painful shame and embarrassment and disgust around themselves and their body because they kept failing the diet. That's like an average yo-yo dieter, which is disordered eating. Eating disorder, on the other hand, is something that I've experienced for over 20 years. And that is, you start off by going on said normal diet that everyone in the world seems to be doing, or everyone around you seems to be doing, and you lose weight and it really works and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And people are like complimenting you and asking you what you're doing, and you feel so freaking powerful and you think you love your body because of the way it looks. And I'm not saying you don't love the way your body looks, but there's a difference. And it's a big difference between body love and loving the way your body looks aesthetically. Loving the way your body looks aesthetically is short-lived, it's conditional, and it won't make you happy. Trust me, I've been there many times. You're happy for the short amount of time that you like the way your body looks, and then you have to keep an eating disorder to try and keep said body, which doesn't work anyway. You know the story, I'm sure. So, as I was saying, the shame that I would have experienced over time, the more diets I failed, like it was just indescribably painful. And then I started to attach all of my self-worth, all of my happiness to the way my body looked. That's the difference between the average yo-yo dieter with disordered eating to someone who has an eating disorder. I've shared these with you again before, but I think it's worth sharing them again. The shit that I used to do, I would shower in the dark so I didn't have to see my body because I had so much shame around it. That's more than just a slight disorder. That's the severity negatively affecting my life. I would literally, if one of my friends or family had like sickness and diarrhea, I would literally go and visit them on purpose and pretend, well, I would want to make sure they were okay, obviously, but I would purposely go and visit them to make sure they were okay and to send them my love, in the hope that I would get the sickness and diarrhea bug, so then I would lose weight. I mean, I can't even believe I'm admitting this out loud, but I'm going to do it because I'm raw and authentic, and I don't feel this way anymore. And actually someone very close to me in my family is going through cancer right now, and they've been told they won't live. I choose to believe differently. So what I'm going to share is, honestly, and again, I have no shame sharing this anymore, but it's still a bit difficult. When I used to hear of people that I didn't know that had cancer and that they were having chemo and they would lose weight through the chemo, the thoughts used to cross my mind. I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud, but I'm being honest with you. This is what my thoughts used to say to me. Maybe if I got cancer and had to have chemo, then I would lose weight. It meant that much to me. I would do anything to lose weight. And so that is an eating disorder. And I'm just like, just taking a moment to like just send so much love to the past version of me who would do those things to herself, or who would think those things, and also make it all about me when someone else would be suffering with cancer and chemo, and I would be there thinking, I wish I had that so I could lose fucking weight. Okay, just send love to that to that past version of me. And if you have these thoughts, or if you're having these thoughts, or if you've had these thoughts, you're not alone, and it's okay. And just send yourself love and compassion, and look at the bigger picture. Start to peel back the layers. Like, how has it got this bad? You're in an eating disorder and you can get out of it. And so a few of the other things that I share, so I know you, like many of you will be able to relate. I would be so scared of weight gain that the feeling of gaining weight when I inevitably did start binging, and then the bulimia started to happen to try and compensate the weight gain, which didn't work for very long. Worked for a good few years, but I was living in a hellhole and it didn't work ultimately. The bulimia behavior started, and then when the weight gain did come, it was so emotionally painful. I didn't want to kill myself. It never got to the stage where I literally wanted to end my life, but it got to the stage where I was so uncomfortable being in my body. I wanted to like escape. I wanted to escape my body. I wanted to escape being me or being in my skin. Like, it was just so overwhelmingly painful to look at the weight that was on my body. I can't even describe in words how painful that was. And I know so many of you will be able to relate. And it doesn't have to be this way. And I could go on forever and share so many different things and that I've experienced when I was in my eating disorders. And now I'm free. So just to give you hope and inspiration, it's absolutely possible for you to get free. And the good news is as well, you can become normal. Seriously, imagine this. I never thought I would be in the normal eaters club, in quotes, because what the hell is normal, right? You can be normal around food and connect back to your natural biological needs around food and tune into your hunger and fullness cues only when, number one, you're eating enough food for your body. Everyone's different. Number two, when you have healed your emotional relationship to food. And number three, when you practice body acceptance on the daily. Because if you think of something that you do naturally, that your body does naturally over and over and over again, no matter how many times you try and stop it, shaving under your armpits, for example. And by the way, why do we even do that? It's linked to beauty culture, like whatever, but I still shave under my arms. And if you imagine how many times you've shaved your legs or under your arms, no matter how many times you've shaved it, your body hair still grows back over and over again because it's natural for your body. So therefore, have faith that your natural hunger and fullness signals will come back when you're out of the disorder. I promise you. Your metabolism is not broken. You will go through different you will go through different metabolic every episode. I can't say a word. Bear with. I want to say, over time, you'll go through different metabolic shifts. That wasn't so hard, was it? Either way, I overcomplicate things in my head. I bet you're glad I don't edit these, don't you? Because hopefully you're laughing right now. You've either laughed or you've turned the episode off. And if you're still listening, then we're meant to be together. You're one of me. As I was saying, your metabolism will go through different shifts depending on how long you've been restricting for, how long you've had an eating disorder for or disordered eating for. There's so many different reasons, but I promise you, you are not broken. Your metabolism is not broken. Your body knows what to do. Even if you have like diseases like thyroid issues and digestion issues and all of that, yes, you'll probably need help by a medical doctor or an energy healer. I use my energy healer, Mary. She's like magic. It's like out of this world what she knows. It's just insane. That might not be in alignment for everybody, and that's okay. But I promise you, your body's not broken. Even thyroid issues and digestion issues and everything, it all is if you look at it from a holistic standpoint, it all points back to being in balance in your body with your mental and emotional health and your physical health. There's so many layers to all of this holistic health, but I promise you, you're not broken. Your metabolism will come back to normal, and so you can eat normally again. And the lovely listener says that she's not physically sick in terms of her not being malnourished. I want to reiterate here, you do not have to be underweight to be malnourished. You can be overweight, in quotes, and be malnourished. Malnutrition is a serious condition that happens when your diet does not contain the right amount of nutrients. It means poor nutrition and can refer to undernutrition, therefore not getting enough nutrients. You can literally be eating low-calorie options of everything that lacks proper nourishment, and or be eating chocolate all day and not be underweight, even for your natural body size, yet you can still be malnourished. If your body's not getting enough nourishment from your food, malnourishment isn't dependent on weight. And so nourishment is a key part of what I teach my clients. I mean, some people call it gentle nutrition. You have to be ready for that. But ultimately, food freedom isn't only eating chocolate all day and nothing else and never moving your body. It's a process, it's a journey, and everyone's different. But ultimately, the goal is health. Physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. And then when you have all of those in alignment, you start to look at financial health, time freedom health, like everything else becomes available to you because you're happy and healthy mentally first. If you haven't got mental health, what the hell is the point in having physical health? In my opinion, mental health is everything, and then everything else comes second to that. And so this listener says that she's binge eating, so therefore she doesn't think her eating disorder or a diagnosis of an eating disorder perhaps is serious enough. Well, I'm here to say that you're binge eating for a reason. And that reason is only either you're physically restricting and or you're emotionally restricting. And just to clarify and to remind you what emotional restriction is, it's simply negatively judging what you eat. And what happens when you negatively judge what you eat, you're unconsciously implying that you do not need to do that in the future, or you need to do something different in the future. Because judging yourself for what you eat unconsciously implies that you need to do something different in the future. What you've done is not okay. And you deserve to have a normal, healthy, and happy relationship with food and your body, each and every one of you and this listener. And you deserve to be healthy physically, mentally, and emotionally. And like I just said, physical health is worth nothing without mental health. Just think about that for a moment. People can preach all these. I mean, I'm a qualified nutritionist. I've studied the science of nutrition. But there's no point in understanding how nutrition works. And I mean, everyone's different as well. That's the thing. We're so different. Each and every one of us are such individuals. There's no point knowing what the best diet lifestyle is for you if, number one, you can't even follow that lifestyle because you have a disordered relationship with food. And number two, you're just feeling shit all the time because you want to eat cake and you're so scared of sugar. I was watching Gaia, which, if you haven't heard of Gaia, which is spelled Gaia, it's like a spiritual Netflix. It's so good. And I kind of knew this already, but I took a screenshot of the thing that was on the screen because it is so key. 90% of all diseases in the world is linked to stress. 90% of all diseases in the world, including cancer, heart disease, everything is linked to stress. And so there's a saying and a quote, I've heard this years before, and it's a brilliant. It goes something like, the stress of eating the cake is way worse for you than the sugar in the cake ever can be. And that is so true. So just check in with your mental health. Maybe you have an allergy to dairy, or you're allergic to dairy, or whatever. As long as you're not going to die, if you don't agree with dairy, yet you can't stop binging on it and you're hating yourself for it, the most important thing for you to do first is to make peace with food. And then choosing to eat dairy actually becomes a choice, not a compulsion, because it won't be a reaction to restriction. I work with women who have foods that they have to avoid medically. And again, it always starts with allowance, and it always comes down to mindset, because your mental health is more important. And then you can choose to work on your physical health only when you make peace with food and you work on your mentality and your emotional attachment to food. And so I'm going to ask you a question. In fact, I'm going to ask you, well, actually, no, I'm not. Well, I am going to ask you a question in a minute, but I'm going to, yeah, I guess they are questions. Okay. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I want you to just think, and then feel free to share with me on social media, Victoria Kleinsman Official on social media, Victoria Kleinsman on Facebook, victoriakleinsman.com on the internet. And I want you to share with me which one resonates with you the most. Meaning, which one, when you hear these questions, which one would you need to act from? Okay. Is it bad enough to change? Or is it good enough to stay? Is it bad enough to change? Or is it good enough to stay? Now, I'm doing a lot of assuming in this episode, I know. If you're anything like I used to be, I would not change anything unless it was from the motivation of, is this bad enough to change? Meaning that it had to get so bad, I had to stop doing what I was doing. I couldn't diet for a friggin' hour. The second I thought about dieting, I would literally be going to the shop and binging my face off. So I had to get to the point where I was fighting, like on my knees, and I cannot anymore. Don't let that be you. I want you to start asking yourself this question. Is this good enough for me to stay? Because you are worth so much more than what you're perhaps experiencing if you're listening or watching this. And that is linked to your self-worth. Now, I ask myself the question, not in terms of food and body, but other stuff. Is this good enough for me to stay? My relationship is incredible, but I would ask myself that too if my relationship wasn't incredible. Is this good enough to stay? Not is this bad enough to change, because what motivation is that coming from? Is this good enough to stay is directly linked to how worthy you know you are, and you know that you deserve better. So I want you to ask yourself, is how you're currently experiencing your relationship with food and your body and yourself, or any relationship with your partner, with your friends, your job, with anything, is this good enough for me to stay? And if you can't answer because you currently aren't connected to how worthy you are and how much self-love you have within you that you're just disconnected from right now, ask yourself the question of, if I were to ask the worthiest self-loving version of me, is this good enough to stay? What would she say? Just connect to that. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of answering this question is I wanted to state and make it clear to each and every one of you listening or watching that binge eating disorder is a restrictive eating disorder. We don't think it is because we focus on the quote problem or the quote behavior, which is eating a shit ton of food. What even does that mean? Because honestly, the amount of clients I've worked with, A client will say to me when they first start working with me, or when we have the consultation call, oh yeah, I binge eat, and I'll have like a family size bar of chocolate and a bag of cookies, and then I feel awful and all of that. And of course they do. I don't doubt, I'm not disvalidating them and their behaviors. But then what does that mean in comparison to my old binges? I used to literally eat 10,000 calories in friggin' 2 hours. I would go hard with that shit. And I'm laughing now only because I literally don't know how the fuck I used to eat that much food in one go, in secret and in shame. Right? And so binge eating isn't the amount of food. Binge eating is any reaction to restriction, period. It doesn't matter whether you've had 5 cookies and you feel so shit about it because you were not meant to have any cookies, or it doesn't matter if you eat the whole chocolate shelf in the supermarket, it's still a binge. And so we think the binge eating is the problem. We think the behavior is the problem, and we just see a shit ton of food or reactionary eating, like almost feeling like you're out of control and you can't stop yourself. That's actually not the problem. If we look at the problem from the root, which is the only way you're going to ever change anything in your life, long term and forever, is to look at the root. Binge eating is a restrictive eating disorder, meaning I have never met a single person who binge eats who is either not currently restricting physically or emotionally, or I have never met a person who binge eats who has never previously physically or emotionally restricted, whether that's purposefully or not. The reason I say that is because if someone was to be brought up in a very poor family and they literally have hardly any money to buy food, let alone buy luxuries that you perhaps desire in terms of food, then, or if you've got a lot of brothers or sisters and there was never enough and you had to like fight for the food else you wouldn't get it, that is restriction. So whether that was like purposely done by yourself or not, that is still restriction. That's a fear of not enough. That's like a fear of a lack mentality, because at that time it was real. You had to get there or else your brother or sister would have ate it all, right? And so I've never met, just to reiterate this, never met a person who binge eats who is not either currently physically restricting or mentally restricting, or that hasn't previously restricted emotionally or physically. Now, binge eating is a healthy, natural response to restriction. Binge eating does not happen without restriction. Binge eating does not happen without some kind of restriction. And if you take it one step further, one step deeper, which is exactly what I do with my coaching, because like I said, we go deep or we go deeper. There's no point in just fannying around changing the behaviors, because that's going to work for a couple of months? I take your money, off you go, your behaviors have changed, come back when you need me again. No. What I do is make sure we're the right fit to work together for a start, and we have like a 2-hour consultation call that is completely free, that is on me with love, to make sure I can help you, to make sure I want to work with you, to make sure you want to work with me. And we get to the root of the cause. And in this context, if you take binge eating, go deeper, peel off a layer. You're binge eating because you're dieting, because you're restricting. But restricting isn't the root cause. Why have you been restricting? To change your body. Why have you been trying to change your body? Because you don't like the way you look. Why don't you like the way you look? There's so many layers to this, and most ultimately it comes down to not feeling good enough, fear of rejection, fear of not being loved as you are, not being enough. And that's my most favorite thing to do, is to work through all of that, and then the behaviors naturally change themselves anyway. Yes, we spend like time on the food stuff, we work on the behaviors as well as going to the root cause, so you get lifelong change. But I just want to share a little bit about emotional eating before I wrap up. So emotional eating is not the same as binge eating, but emotional eating can and does often quickly spiral into binge eating if the person is judging themselves for eating emotionally. I'm going to repeat that again because I've said so many key things in this episode. I've repeated myself a lot, but it's for your benefit. Binge eating can quickly spiral into, don't listen to that because that was the wrong thing. Let me go again. Emotional eating can spiral into binge eating if the person is judging themselves for eating emotionally. So, if you try to stop emotional eating by using willpower, then you're screwed because that's restriction. And restriction causes a reaction, which is binge eating, right? And so you need to adding in other ways to take care of yourself emotionally, add in other ways to emotionally soothe, not trying to eliminate emotional eating. Because there's been countless studies done on this, especially by Linda Bacon in her book Health at Every Size and Body Respect. Highly recommend you read them both. Start with Body Respect if you're not interested in all the science stuff, but you still get the same message. Those that have dieted before in their lives turn to food for emotional comfort. Those that have not dieted in their life, there are such people somewhere, trust me. I've met a few and I've been like, wait, are you human? Anyway, those that have not dieted before turn to other things for emotional comfort, such as shopping, scrolling, sexting. Is that text sexing? Something like that. Or actually not eating. Some people, when they get stressed, don't eat. Not purposefully, they just don't want to eat. They have no appetite. So those that have dieted before always turn to food for emotional comfort. Those that haven't dieted before turn to other things for emotional comfort. And some of them don't eat as a natural response to that emotional discomfort. I mean, ideally, we go to the root again and solve the underlying emotional problem. But hey, we're human and we can't always control the thing or the experience that is causing our emotional discomfort. Yes, we can work on changing our perception to the discomfort because the only thing we can control in the whole of our lives is how we respond to our thoughts, feelings, and life. That is it. But in the moment, when you just want to sit and eat a tub of Ben and Jerry's, if you're there shaming yourself for wanting to do that, or trying to distract yourself by calling a friend, when the last thing you want to do is speak to someone, you just want to sit under a blanket and eat a tub of Ben and Jerry's, do you think that trying not to do that is actually going to help? Or do you think that meeting yourself with love and kindness and compassion and understanding and gentleness and offering yourself other ways to add in, as well as the Ben and Jerry's, to take care of you, to sit with yourself for a few moments and just ask yourself, sweetheart, what do you really need right now? If you want ice cream, fine, we can have ice cream. That's no problem. It's not about the ice cream. What would really nourish your soul right now? Is it calling a friend? Is it journaling? Is it a bath? Is it ice cream and a good film? Like, is it all of those things? And just be there for yourself. That is the only way that naturally emotional eating will start to fall away. And so that was a long answer to your question, dear listener. But in short, the answer to your question, yes, you are sick enough to get help. I'm not labeling you as sick, therefore like it doesn't mean you can get better, because you absolutely can. But to answer your question, yes, you are sick enough to get help. You deserve to get help. You deserve to live a life free and happy in your body and with a peaceful and pleasurable relationship with food. Binge eating is a serious restrictive eating disorder, and actually binge eating has been saving your ass. Binge eating is a healthy, natural response to restriction. You should be pleased. I know this sounds so fucked up, but see if you can be grateful for your binges. If I hadn't started binging after many years of the anorexia, I would literally be dead. I would either be dead or living in the worst shitty fucking hellhole of anxiety of anorexia that I've ever even known. And so I may as well be dead anyway, because I'll be dead inside practically. So binge eating is actually saving your ass. And if you would like help personally from me on your food freedom and body love journey, I actually have 3 different ways now. I've introduced a new way that you can work with me. I have 3 different ways that you can come into my world and be helped and supported by my work and by me personally or in a group. So number 1, this is my new way, and that is called the Body Love Bite. And it's an online program. It's a self-paced online program that you have forever access to. That comes with a support group. That's €49. So that's a new thing that I've added in. The second one up from there is to come and work with me in a group environment. That's my Body Love Buffet. Don't you just love the names? The Body Love Buffet group coaching, which is a lifetime program. So for the life of the program, there's no like kick-off period where you have to start a certain date or you're only allowed in for 3 months or 6 months and you get taken out the group. You're in there forever as long as the group is alive. And we have ongoing monthly live Zoom video group coaching calls with me indefinitely. I'm in the group weekly, coaching you, supporting you. You get access to my Body Love Binge online program, which is my life and soul all into 4 months worth of. It takes you 4 months to get through all of this. Audios, videos, worksheets, workbooks, everything. That's the next step. That is €1,200 or a 6-month payment plan that I can't think off the top of my head. I think it's $220 for 6 months, but I'm always open to making it work for you if those don't work for you. And number 3, the third and final way you can work with me, which is the highest support that I offer, and that is personalized one-to-one coaching. That is the Body Love Binge personalized one-to-one coaching, which is my most favorite way to work with someone. And so to read more about all of that, check it out on my website. Reach out to me on social media if you have any questions. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And if you haven't already, I would love if you could just take a few seconds to 5-star review this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, because it really helps me get my message out there. So thank you for listening. I love you so much. Listener, the answer to your question, please DM me on Instagram so I can find you again and let me know what you thought. Okay, much love.